The Escalade and Navigator are two cars that were designed to compete with each other from the very beginning. After the Navigator was first introduced in 1997, Cadillac quickly followed the same formula with the Escalade in 1998. And while Lincoln led the sales chart for the first few years, Cadillac took over in the early 2000s and hasn't looked back since. Now fast forward to 2018, with the all-new Navigator just now hitting the lots. It has received glowing reviews, and Lincoln is struggling to keep up with demand so far, with the average model spending just 10 days at the dealership before it is sold. Like always, this will be a full in-depth comparison, looking at all the small and large details alike. It will be mostly objective, although some points will be awarded based on my first-hand experience with the vehicles. So let's go ahead and see if the Navigator can truly compete with the Escalade once again. Like always, to start things off, we'll establish the pricing and equipment level of our models. Beginning with the Navigator, we have the Reserve trim, which is the highest trim available at all the Lincoln dealers. It starts at $81,205 with standard 4-wheel drive, and from there we have nearly $8,200 of additional options. They include the technology package, perfect position seats, rear seat entertainment system, Revel Ultima audio, optional 22-inch wheels, and a couple other small items. With $1,195 destination, the total rings in at $90,595. Moving to the Escalade, we have the Platinum ESV. Size-wise, the standard Navigator straddles between the two Escalade lengths, but for the purpose of fairness, we will be grading it as if it was the standard wheelbase. As such, the starting price is $96,795 for the Platinum with standard 4-wheel drive. There are very few options you can add, but we have the interior protection package and optional wheels. Factoring in a $1,300 destination charge, the total rings in at an eye-watering $98,940. Now you may be thinking that's not fair, but the Escalade has a secret weapon up its sleeve. Cadillac is now offering a $7,500 discount across the range, which means that once you apply that, the price is dropped to $91,440. This makes the price difference between the two models less than $1,000, which is extremely insignificant on vehicles this expensive. Anyways, now that we've established that, let's get into the heart of the comparison. Luxury vehicles are all about small details, so we'll start off with the key fob designs. Both are large and have a nice heft to them, but the Escalade's fob is definitely more premium with soft touch materials and real metal trim. Both also have remote start. Obviously, smart entry is included, but on the Escalade there is no sensor behind the door handle. At first glance inside, both interiors have a lot of wow factor, but before we get into that, let's first pop the hood. So under the hoods, the two have similarities and differences. The biggest difference is definitely the engine, which is a large V8 on the Cadillac, but a V6 on the Lincoln. The Escalade's 6.2-liter V8 makes big power at 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. But Lincoln doesn't just use some regular V6. It uses the same high-output twin-turbo unit as in the Raptor. It manages to make even more power than the Escalade, at 450 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque. Ironically for the transmissions though, they are the same, not just meaning they both have 10-speed automatics, but the fact that the transmission itself is identical since GM and Ford co-developed it. As far as fuel economy goes, you would expect the V6 to be more efficient, And it is, but not by much. The Escalade is rated at 14 city, 21 highway, 17 combined, compared to 16 city, 21 highway, 18 combined on the Navigator. Now that we have that stuff out of the way, let's move on to the exterior design and features. Before we dig into all the nitty-gritty details, let's first take a moment to compare the general styling. Being extremely bold and in your face is something of a requirement in this class, and no one does this as well as the Escalade. The front end is dominated by a huge chrome grille, which still gives it an unmistakable presence. Switching to the Lincoln, its grille is also large, but there's a little bit more subtlety and class to the design. I also like how the interior looks like little Lincoln emblems, which is a nice touch. Turning to the headlights, they are of course fully LED, and you have two LED accents and a separated turn signal. But that has nothing on the Escalade, which has a really unique stacked headlight design. There are 6 individual bulbs, and then a daytime running light that runs all the way from the top to the bottom. Strangely, you are missing fog lights and turn signals that are not LED. Overall, it really just comes down to personal preference between a classier or bolder design, so I won't award a point here. Around back, you have the same kind of thing, with the Escalade being the more visually exciting of the two. Both have LED taillights, but I feel like the Navigator looks a little too much like the outgoing model. I also appreciate the hidden wiper on the Escalade versus the exposed one on the Navigator. Both have hidden exhaust pipes and full-size spare tires. And while we're back here, the Navigator beats the Caddy by 200 pounds for towing, at 8,100 pounds versus 8,300 pounds. Now let's start working our way around to all the features. For ground clearance, both have about 8 inches, and the turning circles are also very close. Coming up to the wheels, both have optional 22s. In the case of the Escalade, I like them much better than the standard Platinum wheel, but for the Navigator, they should have stuck with the standard option. Some of you may disagree, but to me, these look too much like a pinwheel. The brakes on both are large diameter ventilated disc in the front and rear, and the tires are all seasons. Moving back to the mirrors, these SUVs have the full suite of features, including heating, power folding, auto dimming, and LED turn signals. They both also have blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. Looking at the sides, the standard length Escalade is several inches smaller than the new Navigator. However, if you get the long versions, that flips the other way, with the Escalade being a few inches longer. As far as the warranties go, the two are exactly the same. They both have 4-year 50,000 mile bumper-to-bumper warranties, and 6-year 70,000 mile powertrain warranties. However, Cadillac gets the point here, since it offers 3 years of complimentary maintenance, compared to only the first oil change on the Lincoln. And then for safety, neither of these two have been rated due to their size, but they still have advanced safety features on board. Both have automatic emergency braking, lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control, and auto high beam headlights. The Escalade has a 26-gallon fuel tank, and the Navigator 23 gallons. That means despite the worse fuel economy, the Escalade has the better fuel range of 442 miles versus 414 miles in the Navigator. Of course, both use premium fuel. Well, that pretty much covers the exterior design and features. So now let's see the real show on the inside. So first, looking inside the cabins, they both look extremely rich and plush, but with totally different design philosophies. As far as the colors go, unfortunately they are both equipped with black interiors that don't show off the details quite as well as other colors, like maple sugar or russet. Regardless though, the Escalade comes with high-end semi-aniline leather and exotic sumi-black Tamo ash wood. The Navigator sounds less exotic with premium leather and an unspecified real wood trim. As far as the seats themselves go, the Cadillac comes with 18-way power seats with 3-mode massaging, but the Navigator has an almost silly 30-way adjusting seat. It too has massaging modes, and can do crazy stuff like individually adjust the thigh support. Plus, the design just looks a lot cooler. Getting in is extremely easy thanks to the huge power running boards. Upon closer examination, the craftsmanship of the cabins is not lost. And once you start touching things, you'll see that everything is exactly what it looks like. On the Escalade, every inch of the upper dash is covered in leather, which is pretty rare even at this price point. Below that, you have real wood, and then Alcantara trim just about everywhere else. Every other place you might touch is one of those 3 materials, so this definitely doesn't feel like a Tahoe. Turning our attention to the Navigator, its upper dash is stitched soft touch plastic instead of leather, like most in the class. Down below, the wood looks a lot better than in the Cadillac since it's open pore, and then all the lower areas are also padded. The overall design is more modern, but it's hard to beat all the leather and Alcantara in the Cadillac. However, I feel differently about the door trim. Both obviously have excellent materials, but the gorgeous speaker grills and seat controls look and feel classy to the max. Also, the fact that all 4 windows are not fully automatic on the Caddy is offensive at something even half this price. To start, press the standard buttons, metal on the Lincoln. Once you do, the screens will fire up, 8 inches on the Escalade and 10 inches on the Navigator. So both gauges are really cool 12-inch digital ones. On the Cadillac they look more traditional, but the Lincoln has strangely dull colors and has way less customizability. Additionally, both have heads-up displays, with the Lincoln having much more information. Coming back to the steering wheels, they are both soft leather, wood, and aluminum. They also power adjust and are heated. And this isn't worth a point or anything, but I just have to say that the Escalade switchgear is both awful looking and flimsy feeling. What is point worthy, however, is the shifter, and it feels a lot like the switchgear. I know a lot of people complain about electronic shifters, but in all honesty, the Navigator's is much easier to use than Cadillac's chintzy column one. Once in reverse, both have 360-degree cameras. For some reason, the Navigator's doesn't take up the whole screen, but at least it is high resolution unlike the Escalades. It also has a handy corner view, so it gets the point. Of course, these are large SUVs at the end of the day, so storage is a strong suit. The Escalade actually has a refrigerator in place of the center console, which is really cool. Both have wireless phone chargers and a couple more storage bins in the front, with lots of connections. But what sets the Navigator apart is that it has a pass-through, which can be used for just about anything. So even though the hidden compartment in the Cadillac is cool, the Lincoln gets the point here. Now let's sample the audio system. Both these sound systems are phenomenal, but I have to award the point to the Revel since it is more balanced versus the bass-heavy Bose. One area that's not hard to decide between the two is the climate controls. While both are tri-zone automatic, the Cadillac opted for fancy-looking but really impractical capacitive buttons. As you can see, they aren't very sensitive and only register clicks about half the time. This is yet another example of why climate controls should almost always be buttons. Both also have heated and cooled seats, but the Escalade lets you pick butt or back independently. Now let's move into the infotainment systems. Unlike most of the German and Japanese competitors, both trucks have touchscreen interfaces, but the similarities end there. Starting out with the Navigator, you have a big 10-inch display which is very vivid. This is essentially the same Sync 3 system as in most Fords, but with different colors and graphics. That's certainly not a bad thing, as this is one of the easiest systems to use on the market. A lot of brands brag about tablet-like operation, and this is one of the few to actually succeed in that. And as a bonus, both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are on board. Moving to the Escalade, unfortunately, it is still equipped with the older version of Q and all the problems associated with that. Performance is decent for the most part, but like the climate buttons, the screen doesn't always respond to every touch. Additionally, the screen is only 8 inches and significantly lower resolution than the Navigator's. Overall, I can't find anything this system does better than Sync 3, so it will not receive the point. Wrapping up the front of the cabin, both have auto-dimming rearview mirrors and HomeLink universal remotes, but the Escalade has a unique ability to give you an uninterrupted camera feed. This is very handy in something this big, and thankfully it's much higher res than the other cameras in the car. Last but not least, the Navigator has a panoramic moonroof with power sunshade, while the Cadillac only has a tiny regular sized one with a manual sunshade. Well, that's it for the front of the cabin, so now let's evaluate the important spaces for the rest of the family. One thing to note right off the top is that the regular and ESV Escalades have exactly the same dimensions in the first, second, and third rows. That means no matter what, the Cadillac will always have slightly less leg and headroom than the Lincoln. Measurements are 39.7 inches versus 41.4 inches of legroom, and 39.1 versus 40 inches of headroom, despite the fact that the Navigator had to compensate for the pano moonroof. Once inside, both have amenities galore, starting with the rear climate. The buttons are arranged much like the front, and included are rear heated seats. Down below, they both have lots of connections, including a very useful household outlet. Some of those connections are for the rear seat entertainment systems. In the Escalade, you have not one, but 4 screens, which is fine and dandy until you actually use them. They are all very antiquated and lack the modern features of the Navigator, like wireless streaming from your phone and the ability to watch live TV through Sling. To access the third row, you can either go between the captain's chairs or fold the seats. Once back there, you will find a massive difference between the two. Not only are the dimensions much larger on the Nav, but its independent rear suspension means that you sit far enough off the ground to have adequate thigh support. And as an added bonus, you can power recline the seats and you have a USB port. Both trucks have foot-activated power tailgates that can also open up the glass independently. Once they open up, you can again notice a sizable difference between the two. The Escalade's live rear axle raises the floor by several inches, and further reduces the space behind the third row to only 15.3 cubic feet, versus the Navigator's 19.3. Both trucks can power fold the second and third rows, opening things up to a maximum of 94.7 cubic feet in the Escalade, and 103.3 cubic feet in the Navigator. Well everyone, that concludes this very luxurious comparison. Even though the Navigator won, there are still many reasons why you might prefer the Cadillac, so make sure you definitely check them out in person before making any decisions. Thanks for joining us on another Faceoff comparison, and be sure to subscribe for more comparisons and our signature full review videos. See you next time.